setting up items triggers low-level discovery efficiently within Zabbix templates. And as you can see from this slide, I made a strike through to webinars and changed it to Meetup. And that's mainly because we are running a lot of webinars as well. And I simply took the same template there, changed it a little bit. And that means that if you would like to join one of our webinars, go ahead, feel free. We have quite a few of them planned. Before I jump into the topic, my name, Brian van Baekel, Zabbix trainer, Zabbix consultant at Opensource ICT Solutions, Zabbix partner in the Netherlands, United Kingdom, and the United States. So basically started the company 5 years ago, and we just keep expanding while we are just focusing on the product Zabbix. And when you are working with Zabbix, then you, well, in my opinion, must know what templates are, how to build those templates, why they are useful, etc., etc., etc. And that's exactly what we are going to cover or try to cover right now. So what are templates? Well, I always try to explain it in just one sentence, a blueprint of your monitoring needs. And that may sound a bit strange, but you are building a blueprint with all the metrics that you would like to have, all problem thresholds, all visualization for those items, low-level discovery rules, web monitoring, or even host dashboards. So you build it in a template, and then hopefully you can reuse it. Now, if you are familiar with what templates are, you might immediately think that that's the same as we see on host directly. And yeah, you are correct. First screenshot here is a template page. Here we can see a host. And yeah, we have items, triggers, graphs, dashboards, discovery rules, web monitoring. And we just have the same thing on the host. So now you might think, but if it's the same, do we have some benefits? I mean, we can build those metrics, those items directly on hosts. So why should we go through the hassle of building a template? Well, we can do it on a host directly. I think that's a good question. And the answer on should we use templates is always yes. At least in my opinion, it's always yes. If we build a template, we can just build the blueprint, link the template to the host, and bear with me, I will show it in a few slides. We link the template to the host, and all entities are just on that host immediately. If we make a change on the template, all hosts where this template is linked on will be updated immediately. If we export this template, we just get the full export, the full configuration of what we would like to monitor and when something is problematic or not. So another great benefit. The last one in this list, dynamic configurations. And again, give me a few slides to show you within a template, we built our configuration and then we make it dynamic so that we can use it on a lot of different hosts. And we can just keep on reusing it because of the dynamic component in it. Something that is still possible is linking templates through each other so we can nest them. We can build a template module A, and from this template, we can link other template modules. It is being used, it works, and I'm not a big fan of it. And that's, in my opinion, mainly because of the first drawback. Exporting them is problematic. If I export template module A, then I also must have the other linked templates, otherwise I cannot import it. Same thing goes for visibility. It's hard to see which template is linked through which template. And one of the key things that is giving trouble is versioning. And this versioning is actually the reason why this ZPX Next was created. A few weeks ago, this ZPX Next turned up, and the title of this feature request is simplified templates by removing nesting. So linking templates through each other is right now possible, but there is a feature request to get rid of it. I placed a comment on it, and actually I think it's a good thing to remove it. And that's not because it does not work, but it is making things more complicated. And especially the versioning is just not possible. So right now this is supported, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. Okay, we create a template, or we should be creating a template. Then of course, you've got to give the thing a name. And in our opinion, it's always what and how. So what are we going to monitor with this template? And how are we going to do this? By a Zabbix agent, by a Zabbix agent active, by SNMP. And no, I did not forget this by. Zabbix forgot. And if I recall right, it will be fixed in the next versions. Nathan brought it up at the Zabbix Summit, and well, Zabbix picked it up, it will be fixed. So the naming is kind of important because it's giving you quickly an idea of what's going on. And once we progress through this presentation, we will go to trigger naming as well, where we basically see the same structure. We really think those things are important. Once we have a template in place, we must or should link it to a host. So we have a few options there. We create a new host, or we use an existing host, go into the configuration page, and then from the drop down or scroll thing, we can link a template. Few options, we can hit the select button and then click through the list, or we can just start typing and Zabbix will highlight where it matched on. And we just click on it and it will be added. Yes, we can link multiple templates to one host. So what I actually did for this second screenshot, TEM, clicked on template module B, again TEM, and then clicked on template module A. Another thing that we can do is mass update, and that's another, in my opinion, really useful feature. We select one or multiple hosts, hit the mass update button at the bottom of the page, and then we can just link, replace, or unlink a template to all selected hosts. Just, what is it, 3 clicks, perhaps 4 clicks, and you have linked all the templates. And then monitoring starts. Well, does it? It really depends if you already created items. So when we are talking about items, we are basically talking about metrics. Everything that you would like to monitor within Zabbix is an item, and it can be something like CPU load, temperature, memory usage, SNMP checks, database items, remote APIs, SSH checks, you name it, we call it items, always. The list here is extensive, and it's not even the full list. So we have a lot of different options to get metrics towards your monitoring system. And this list is, well, I think it's not complete, but it is giving you so many different options that it is barely limiting you. I left out one of the most powerful ones, which is script item, just building JavaScript, talking to remote systems, etc., etc. Extremely powerful. When we are talking about items, we also must make a decision, because we can create those items directly on hosts, or we can create them on templates. So I have a very strong opinion here, or actually I have 2 very strong opinions. The first one, pick one, but do not mix and match. The second one, items should be built on templates. So in my opinion, you build items always on templates and then link a template to a host. There are a few reasons why I think that's the best option there, but in the end, Zabbix is not really limiting you, so it is up to you. I mean, if you would like to go for mix and match and, well, try to figure out which one is created where, go for it. For Zabbix, that's perfectly fine. Now, if we create items on templates, it's just a normal configuration. So let's say that we create an item to monitor SSH availability. We go into the template, we create a new item and select a type. In this case, it will be a simple check. And then we go for the key net TCP service. Zabbix is asking us which service would you like to monitor, on which IP address, on which port. Well, we set SSH, so we populate it with SSH, and we should use the default IP address of the interface and the default port, so we can just leave it empty. Sure. It will check if SSH is available on port 22, and yeah, there we go. We have a metric. Monitoring will start. Great. But what if SSH is not listening on the default port? Okay, no worries. We just change it. So 2222 as a port. Great. Why not? Well, actually, no. We built this on a template. And if we do this on a template level, all hosts where this template is linked on will now start using port 2222, which, yeah, might be what you want, but probably not. So we have to pull off another trick. Macros. I love these things. We just built the same item. We specify the service SSH. Second parameter is left empty. We would like to use the default IP address. And the third one is not a static port, but we are defining a user macro here. This user macro is a variable which we just define, in my opinion, on the template level. So on the template level, and we can actually see it, I'm in template module A. We go to the macros tab, define the macro, and we specify a default value of 22. Now, if this template is linked to a host, that host will always use the default value, and it works great. But we wanted to go for a custom port. Sure, we go to the host, we go to the tab macros, inherited and host macros, and we can just change the value to something custom. And this way we have the default port 22 defined on the template level. All hosts will use port 22. But that single host where we change the default into something else, we'll use that custom port. And this way we can just have one template with a lot of different custom ports. Instead of building 10,000 templates, we just build one and make it dynamic. In my opinion, this is just how it should be, because we have a dynamic config. Another thing, when we update our items, changes made on templates will be propagated to the items on those hosts immediately. And then, of course, we have to wait for the config update, etc., but immediately those entities will be updated. So that means that if you are on a host config, looking at the items, you might see some fields grayed out. Other ones are just white and can be changed, but most of the fields are grayed out. And that means that you only can manage those fields via the template. So you just click on the template name, and then you will be brought back to the template where you can change it. Although we can build the overrides here, and we can change those entities, those properties of this item, I'm not a huge fan of it. And that's because of two reasons. One, once we change something on the template level, it will be overriding whatever we changed on the host level. Two, it will be hard to manage, simply because we don't see that it is not a default value anymore. Okay, so we have an item in place. We have monitoring. Now we, in my opinion, need triggers as well. We would like to know when something is problematic. And that's exactly what a trigger is. It's a definition of when something is a problem or not. Default state of a trigger is always okay. And then every single time a value comes in, it will be evaluating those triggers. And yeah, if the value is violating the threshold, it will change the state to problem. And yeah, then we have a problem within Zabbix. Based on those state changing, events will be generated. Events will always be there. We cannot really configure them, and we don't really need to configure them because they are used in actions. So they can just be there and they won't really hurt you. But we can use them for sending out notifications or executing commands. If we look at this page here, we have a lot of different things that we can populate. And it starts once again with the name. And in my opinion, that name is important. There we go. When we have a problem within Zabbix, it is always looking at the name to see what's wrong. And we have a few different options again. I mean, the Zabbix agent has been unavailable for 5 minutes on host.host, which is a long text to read, but also there is redundant useless data. Or we just keep it short and nice. Zabbix agent is not available for agent timeout, which is 5 minutes in this case, or 3 minutes, or whatever you configured. We have a few benefits. Because of the macro here, we have once again a dynamic configuration, but also the name is really short, yet describing the problem. The Zabbix agent is not available. And there we are. You don't have to think about it. It is just 4 words giving you that idea. So what is wrong is sorted out. Where did it go wrong? Well, here we have the problem name. This is where it went wrong. So this is the host name. And yeah, I took the screenshot because I did not really want to build it myself if there is a good screenshot already present. So on Summit Linux 02, Zabbix is not available. If we look at the other one, Summit Linux 02, the Zabbix agent has been unavailable for 5 minutes on Summit Linux 02. The text is longer, but also there is redundant data. I can see the host name here. Well, it is already in front of it. So is it bad? Yes, in my opinion, it is. But if it works for you to have such a long problem name, go for it. Zabbix is not really limiting you. Okay, we have the naming sorted out. Now we need to build actually the thresholds. I mean, when is something a problem? CPU load is too high, it's over 5. Then we give it some sort of severity and we build an expression. If the last value on this template or this host for this item key was over 5, then it is a problem. And I see a few problems already in this slide. Not only the actual problems, but configuration mistakes. We are building this on a template with a static value or static threshold. And here is also static 5. So what do we do if we have a host where the CPU load is always a bit higher than other hosts? Create another template or make it dynamic again. Well, if we make it dynamic, which of course is preferred, we start using a user macro again. And on the template level, we define the threshold. So user macro CPU.load.high with a default value of 5. And this just works. We can make it even better because right now we still have the static 5 in the name. So let's assume that on a host, we change this. Then we still have the static 5, which can be solved by removing that static value and replacing it by the user macro again. And this way, once again, we have an extremely flexible setup. On some hosts, we have a threshold of 5. On other hosts, we have a threshold of 2, etc., etc., etc. And we do not need to create extra templates. We do not need to create custom items on those templates. We are just changing the thresholds in the macros. Another thing, operational data introduced, I think, in Zabbix 4. And when it was introduced, it was a bit messy. Right now, I kind of like it. What's going on? If we go to monitoring problems, we have the host name, we have the problem name, and we have a static value here. This static value is the threshold. I mean, if you go back one slide, you can see the threshold was listed in the problem name. So that's presented over here. This is just giving you the threshold, not the actual value. And the actual value might be something that is really helping you analyzing what's going on. So in this same monitoring problems page, we can select show operational data separately. What you get is an extra column showing the most recent value. So in this case, this trigger went into the problem state when the CPU load was above 1, but currently it is 1.94, so it almost doubled. And this is just giving you really quickly an idea of what's going on by just selecting show operational data separately. Now, if I click on with problem name, nothing is going to happen. This column will be removed and I will not see anything. And that's because it depends a little bit on your configuration. This is just available by default. I don't have to configure it. Yet, if I configure my operational data, then I can tell Zabbix that it should be presented with the problem name. So it will be just added or appended here to the problem name. If you do not configure it, you will always see item.lost value, so the most recent value. If you configure it, you can add your own text or invoke multiple items. Really depends on your own preferences. I kind of like to have just a value there because, well, this is giving me extra information, which is kind of redundant. I know that it is regarding my CPU load, so I don't need to see the text current CPU load is. But once again, it's up to you. We have an extra field here, and this extra field is the event name. And what we can see is that it is grayed out. And that's because I did not configure it. Yet, it is extremely useful and powerful at the same time. Look at this. We are triggering, we are giving a problem if the CPU load is above this threshold. But that's not telling me what happened in this case, past 15 minutes. So we can build an event name, load increased by, and then we start building macros. And here I'm telling Zabbix to make some calculations. The average in the last 15 minutes divided by whatever was before it. So another 50 minutes before it. We format it to a normal readable value, and then we present it. Problem name, load increased by 174% in the last 15 minutes. Current CPU load 2.11. And actually, this is giving me a lot of information in just a very few words. Load increased by 174%. Currently, it's 2.11. And of course, 2.11 might be not that problematic, but this is a demo system. So in this case, it is problematic. If you think that this is already complicated, it took me a solid 30 minutes to come up with this, because every other example is taking into account a lot more time periods, etc., etc. So we can make really complicated calculations where we can tell Zabbix that it should take into account the average in the last month compared to the average 3 months ago, for example, and then present it in the text. So Zabbix is again giving you a lot of flexibility here to give you the most information in just one line. In this trigger expression, I have been using last as a function. Last, often used. It works great, but might not be the best idea. So Zabbix just created more functions. And I still remember the time that I started using Zabbix, where there were like 10 or 15 functions. Right now, that list is extremely long. I mean, look at this scroll bar. There are so many different functions giving you so many different options. So the full list is in the documentation. Simply, I couldn't list it here because it's too extensive. but we can use a lot of different functions to define if something is a problem or not. It's really up to you. Now that we have items, now that we have triggers, let's make it even more flexible. And this is a topic that I personally really enjoy building, low-level discovery. So we can automatically create all those different entities. We can create items, triggers, graphs, dashboards, even hosts, based on what Zabbix is discovering. Once an entity is added on the remote system, Zabbix will detect it and start monitoring it. Once that entity is removed from that remote system, we can tell Zabbix to automatically clean up its mess. And that way, well, we have somewhat a zero-touch configuration where Zabbix will detect things and remove it if it's not there anymore. In order to do that, we create low-level discovery rules. So we create a rule where we actually tell Zabbix, scan this entity or scan this type. And whatever you discover there, create items for it, create triggers for it, create graphs for it. This low-level discovery rule will start scanning, and hopefully it detects some entities. Once an entity is discovered, it will create the items as per prototypes, triggers as per prototypes, graphs as per prototypes, just for this entity. And then for the next entity, it will do the same thing, and for the next entity, the same and the same and the same. Once again, we can build discovery rules on hosts and on template level. And I think you know already my opinion here. It should be built on a template level. So in a template, we create a new discovery rule. And I took a default one here, mounted file system discovery, which is discovered or executed by a Zabbix agent. This is again a long list with various options. So once again, we have flexibility, how data should be brought to your Zabbix instance. Well, then we give it some key that it knows how to get it, etc., etc. Once this discovery rule is executed, hopefully you get something like this. So this is a JSON formatted string that is brought back. And as you already see, there are macros to make things dynamic. So in this case, we are discovering file systems, and we are discovering file system name /sys, type sysfs, and then the next file system and the next and the next and the next. These macros allow you to make things dynamic once again. So if we go to the next slide, we can already see what's going on. In the name here, we see that the macro is used, fs name space utilization, and that's to make things dynamic. This is the item prototype. Discovery rule will be executed, and once it is executed, it will discover entities and create items per entity. And then that macro is replaced by the actual entity name. So in this screenshot, we are looking at /boot. It starts monitoring this file system, and well, metrics will come in. Hopefully in those metrics, you will get useful data where you can build triggers from. So in the triggers, it's just the same thing. We start using those macros to make things dynamic. So fs name, disk space is low, some custom event name, some operational data, and then suddenly we have a trigger expression, which is using a function lost, which is utilizing that low-level discovery macro, but which is also utilizing user macros to make the thresholds dynamic again. And then we are combining things. So take the last value for this and look at the total space minus the used space, or do a trend prediction. And quickly you see how things get complicated. So we are using a function, and then we are combining different functions into that trigger to see if something is a problem or not. This is great. This can be complicated out of the box, but it really, well, depends on your own setup, your own preferences. One of the drawbacks of low-level discovery is that you get everything. So all discovered entities will be added by default. Sometimes that's exactly what you want. Think of like switch ports, but sometimes you just want some specific entities. So we can filter. We can just tell Zabbix, filter out some specific regular expression and only give me whatever is matching there. So in the discovery rule, we have the option filters where we tell Zabbix if the value of this macro is matching this regular expression, then we would like to have it. And in this case, I'm telling Zabbix, well, if it is XFS or sysfs, then I would like to monitor it. Otherwise, I do not need those items, so don't discover them, don't add them. This is one way of fixing it. Now you might think, what's the other way? Overrides. Overrides are relatively new and extremely useful. So again, we are building basically filters. We are doing the same thing here. If this macro matches this regular expression, then do something with it. If fs type matches, and this is a negative match, so if it is not matching XFS or sysfs, including the typo, then do something. And that do something for every item prototype, do not discover it. So we are just, well, filtering out file systems. If it is not matching this, do not discover it. Otherwise, add it as an item. But as you can see, we can change the update interval, storage periods, tags, and we have various objects. And that means we have flexibility again. So how about this one? We think that XFS is important. So if file system type matches XFS, then all items created with this file system type should be checked every 10 seconds. And all triggers should have a severity of high. For the other file systems, use whatever you just configured in your template. And this is actually giving you a lot of options, especially when you start combining things. So you can just filter out the items that you want. For example, only add physical file systems, filters. And then we add overrides to change the behavior so that, I don't know, /home is never alerted on during the night or is having a different severity or things like that. So it's giving you, again, a lot of flexibility within your templates. Wrapping up, just a high level overview, really high level overview. Each topic that I just covered, so items, triggers, low-level discovery rules can take hours, or depending on how deep we go, even days to explain really in depth. It really depends on so many things, how complicated this configuration can be. So just a high-level overview. Thank you. Let's see. Do we have any questions?
Yes. Okay. Let me read a couple to you. I don't know why my video is not working. Anna, if you can enable my video, that would be great. Here's a question that it was more towards the beginning of the presentation, but I'll read it anyways. What is the best way to use updated templates? What is the best way to get or use updated templates? In other words, how do we integrate changes and updates for the templates?
I did not show it, but if you go to git.zabbix.com, all templates are there. So you upgrade your Zabbix instance. Zabbix will never touch it. You must update your templates yourself. You can just download them from git.zabbix.com and import them. During the import, the newer versions of Zabbix are just giving you what was changed, so you can review those changes before the import takes place. And that way should be kind of solid.
Excellent. I have another question here. Quick idea. If I monitor a Cisco WLC wireless LAN controller, I can discover access points connected to this WLC, and they show up as additional items name. Items, name, connect client, etc. But is it also possible to discover such access points as new hosts in Zabbix, so I can use them for putting on the map, as an example?
Yep, absolutely. So that's what we call host prototypes. And we start monitoring the WLC. Every access point will be added as a new host with its own specific templates linked to it, with its own metrics, etc. In the older versions of Zabbix, I tried to stay away from it. It was kind of limited. But from top of mind, since Zabbix 6.2, we can change a lot of entities on those host prototypes, on those discovered hosts, which is adding, again, flexibility. So right now, I think that's absolutely the best way forward. Host prototypes within your discovery rules. Yeah.
Excellent. Any other questions? Nathan, are you listening in right now?
No, he is not, but he can hear me.
Oh.
So he's grabbing his headset.
Because there's a question here specific to Nathan, and I'll get it cleaned up, or maybe you can help as well, Brian.
Yeah, give him a few seconds. He is reading along, I think. So
I'm here.
There he is. Hey, Nathan, quick question. I thought I'd cover it now so we can get to all the questions. Someone asked, new fancy features in 6.2 are making this user very happy, but he's a bit afraid. He wasn't sure if minor versions are the same production version, number one. Two, as you have mentioned, it will require more effort for more frequent upgrades. May I stay at agent 6.0.x and use server 6.2.x?
All right. Yeah, good question. So again, good question. Yeah. So the minor versions are just your general, your bug fixes and your security fixes. So you can safely install those minor versions at all times. It should only really require a restart of your service, and none of the database structures or anything like that will be touched. So they are safe to be installed. And when we're talking about the minor versions, that's everything after the 6.2 dot the number there, the third number. So you can safely install those, no problem. As for the more effort required on the more frequent upgrades, like I said in my presentation, your agents are backwards compatible, which means that if you install Zabbix Agent 6.0 everywhere in your environment, because that's the LTS release, and you're running Zabbix Server 6.2, you can monitor all of those agents just fine, no problem, which is actually the smart way to go if you don't need any of the features included in the 6.2 or 6.4 agent. So definitely. Hope that answers it.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Nathan, for jumping on like that. Appreciate it. All right, let's move on. We're a little bit behind schedule, so we'll try to catch up here.